Making Monsters with Taylor Dahl. It's like beer and brats, a perfect combination.
You know the deal.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Making Monsters. We are continuing on some of this offseason talk. A lot of things to talk about this offseason, and what better person to talk about it with than Courtney Cronin for ESPN, Chicago Bears reporter for ESPN. Courtney, thank you for hopping on with me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I think the big one is to start with Caleb Williams. There's a lot of routes I want to go for this interview and to get your thoughts on a lot of this stuff. But Caleb, obviously, there was an OTA. People started panicking a little bit. It's easy to start overreacting when we're in OTAs, and especially with some new faces and some guys that do have high expectations. But it looked like this last OTA, things clicked really well with Caleb, and it looks like some connections were starting to form with some of these guys, like Roma Dunze and DJ Moore. So thoughts on that, what you've seen from Caleb so far this offseason?
Yeah, so he's got effectively six practices in the NFL under his belt. These are, of course, non-contact practices that are wearing shorts and T-shirts out there, more or less. It's hard to know what you can take away versus what's like the byproduct of it being this time of year. But the growth and the progress that he's shown from week 1 of OTAs to week 2, and then this week we'll get a chance to see him at rookie minicamp. You just try to gauge it on a practice-by-practice basis, the ones that we're allowed to see, and then kind of what you're hearing from coaches and players. So that first day that we saw him, which would have been like May 24th, whatever that first OTA was, they were in the red zone and he did not look good there. Well, what's the reason for that? Well, maybe because it's his third practice ever in the NFL. And, usually if you're thinking about how they install things throughout the week, red zone period's a Friday drill. So if that's the last practice and that would have been his first time doing red zone period in the NFL, like where you have the full squad with you, like no wonder it didn't look great. He had he's going against, most everybody on the defense is there. So that's a secondary that has been together now for a number of years. And they add, Kevin Byard in on the back end at safety, but you're going against some very experienced veteran defensive players. So of course it's going to look like the defense is ahead of the offense. I'd be concerned, honestly, if it didn't at this point, but to see him go from that practice, which was not a good day for the offense, to what we saw last Friday, and especially in 7-on-7, it was more just like, what are the mechanics showing you? Like, is he leading receivers with the way that he throws the ball? Is the footwork better? Is he throwing on time? Those sound simple in theory, but those are very real things that you got to see, have tangible proof and evidence of walking away from that practice. And that to me was the progress that Matt Eberflus said he wanted to see. That checks a box there. So going forward from there, now that you're going to have the entire complement, or so you expect, of the roster there at mandatory camp, what other boxes does Caleb Williams need to check as the team gets ready to break until training camp? Because that'll give the Bears a good, point of reference to know just how far he's come and how far he has to go before, they get back and kind of go full speed into this thing at the end of July.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking on the secondary, because I think that's a big point, and that's what's so odd about OTAs and camp in general, because in practices, because you're facing your own players, your own team is facing their own team. So I think you want to have days where each of them are winning. To me, that's a good thing. You're seeing positive things from both sides, obviously, when that happens. But the secondary, I think that's something that a lot of people are going into this season expecting it to should be one of the better secondaries in the league. And we'll see, Kevin Byard being one of the new pieces. And I know some people weren't too happy with that signing. I personally liked it. But the secondary as a whole, what have you seen from them from camp? And I know with Jalen Johnson getting his contract, but still Kyler Gordon, we really saw him take some massive leaps the last year. And then Jaquan Brisker too, who probably is one of the leaders now that Eddie's gone. So what have you seen from them from camp so far?
They're a very vocal unit, and I think that's reflected in how they play together. In this last practice where we saw Caleb Williams have a much better day, offense kind of as a whole, he's going against a secondary that didn't have 4 starters practicing. And again, these are voluntary workouts, voluntary practices, but can he do that against this defense when everybody's supposed to be here for mandatory camp? That's another place that you can check the progress and see how he performs against what you're right. Like it is one of the better secondaries in the NFL. This group, starting with Jaquan Brisker and Kyler Gordon, those two have been together for 3 years now. So they know the scheme, they know the system, the upgrade that they made at safety, just in terms of health. I think that's what Kevin Byard, the longevity at that position, what they weren't able to get out of Eddie Jackson the last couple of years, that's what they're hoping they do have this year with Kevin Byard. It's probably the strongest unit, I'd say, on the entire team. I think that that's a very fair estimation of where like this team is going to excel most this year. We saw the uptick in interceptions and takeaways after they brought Montez Sweat in. So certainly having a pass rush helps what you do on the back end, so that they can only further improve what they're doing up front. That's going to help guys like Jalen Johnson. I mean, they didn't pay him just to pay him. They paid him because he's a vital part of what this defense can do. Like you're banking on this group being able to take the next step and become one of the harder teams to throw on, one of the better pass defenses in the NFL. So to watch that group mature over the last couple of years and, watch the Bears work their personnel in to find like what that mix is, what the right mix is, the 5 starters that they have back there. It's in a good place. And I think they feel pretty good about that right now.
Yeah, and you spoke on the defensive line in general and what that pass rush last year did for the Bears. We can put the numbers out there of what once Montez Sweat was added, everything that kind of seemed to formulate on the defense. And then now Montez Sweat alongside Javon Dexter, who really started making a massive leap towards the end of last season. And I think a lot of people are expecting that to continue. What do you think about the edge? A lot of, most of us kind of vocalize, we feel like they need somebody else on the other side. Some people say give DeMarcus Walker this chance. They obviously used a draft pick on Austin Booker. Do you think they'll go after somebody, or do you think they'll kind of ride with what they have and see how it goes?
It's always hard to tell like how good your pass rush is until they're A, in pads, but B, they're not able to hit the quarterback at any point during the offseason, their own quarterback. So gauging that, I think that they still probably need somebody there, a veteran presence. And I've said on record before, like I think Yannick Ngakoue would be a cost-efficient move for them. He's coming off the ankle injury. He's back practicing. By the time training camp comes around, I've been told that he should be on track to come back. I wouldn't be surprised if that's one of the first calls the Bears make, just to be able to shore up that position, because they saw last year what it was like for the couple of weeks that they had Sweat and Ngakoue playing together. They saw the improvement up front. Now, you want to take another step there, like to take another step with your pass rush, to be able to, like, starting with your edges. And like, I guess we'll see with Javon Dexter. Like right now, all signs are pointing towards him being this team's starting 3 technique. Is he ready for a role like that? Because that would lead them to want to bring somebody else in, like a veteran free agent sitting out there right now. But you can also rest assured that this is a team that is very aggressive at the trade deadline. So if they don't make a move, whether it, I anticipate them making some move along the defensive line before like things kind of kick into high gear in the preseason. But I also don't rule it out if they need to go find somebody on another team before the trade deadline. They've got multiple draft picks next year, like multiple pairs of, they got 2 seconds. They've got a lot of draft capital at their disposal to start using that if they need to go upgrade a position to go make a push for, potentially a playoff spot. But they've been aggressive with that stuff before. I just would think that the defensive line is nowhere near complete just yet. And the numbers are there to, sack percentage, just in terms of total sacks, quarterback hits, all of those things definitely need to see an increase this year. And I think changing your personnel too, or like bringing, better personnel in to help that happen is going to be a priority for them.
Yeah, one of the things, Courtney, I've talked about a lot on my podcast recently is what we've kind of seen from Ryan Poles. And we talk about his honesty. He's very upfront about his plan with the Bears, and he's followed through with that from day one. And then also some of the moves. I mean, just going back to Torrey Taylor, not wanting to miss out on Torrey Taylor, and then using draft picks for Austin Booker. And there's so many examples of things that he's done to kind of show. And Ryan Bates is another one to me. He wanted him a couple years ago. This offseason, he had the chance to go get it, and he got him. So to me, I agree with you. I think that if Ryan Poles sees somebody there and the need is he will do it. I don't think he's one of those guys that are going to shy away from making that move. Now, one of the position groups I think that we haven't talked about a ton, and mainly because Keenan Allen and Gerald Everett and Roma Dunze and all of these other weapons. But the running back room, to me, is going to be so interesting because I think the Bears fans, for the most part, really love and appreciate Khalil Herbert. They're kind of waiting to see Roschon Johnson, what he can be in the NFL with more touches. But then they add someone like DeAndre Swift. So what have you seen from camp so far of how that running back room might look and the order of 1, 2, 3?
It's hard to tell right now. Again, that's one of those positions that until you see them in pads, until you see them, what the workload's going to be, like it's a hard one to gauge in terms of like, what's the physicality of these guys? What we do know about DeAndre Swift, though, is that first off, they paid a premium to get him. So very clearly, if you're just kind of following the numbers here, he's going to have a big role in this offense. And it's good because you have a rookie quarterback. You should be able to lean on the run support that you're probably not getting out of the quarterback position as much as you did the last couple of years with Justin Fields, which is good. Like that means that, you're not relying on putting your quarterback in that position unnecessarily. But I just think that DeAndre Swift can give you so many different things, catching passes out of the backfield. He can be a threat in the short yardage game. Like he can do a lot of different things running, as a running back and, as a running back who can also, tally up some receptions too, that I would imagine this is probably a role for him where he's going to be that premier back in this offense, kind of the way that, 2 years ago we saw with David Montgomery, barring some of the injuries, like and what they did last year, going by committee and like injuries kind of dictated the need for that because of Khalil Herbert missing, going on IR due to the ankle injury and Roschon Johnson kind of coming in, kind of coming out. I still think they feel very highly of him, of Johnson, and also his special teams contributions cannot be understated. Like he's, or cannot be overstated. Like he's a huge asset to them there. And now as they're trying to work on these kickoff rules and what returners do and what the best skill sets to use back there on kickoff return, we'll see. But I think DeAndre Swift is going to have a very big role in this offense because he came here as a free agent. He chose to come to Chicago. He got paid at a premium when we didn't think running backs were going to be making this much, but he did. And I think that the Bears look at him and his age and the potential and what the ceiling is and think that he's going to be able to handle a very big role this year.
And that's another interesting one to me is the special teams, because you just spoke on a lot of the people that I've talked to kind of think that running backs are going to be able to flourish with the new kickoff rules. But then you have other guys like someone we've been kind of waiting for with Velus Jones, who a lot of people think he may have a big opportunity this season too because of some of the changes. We saw what the Bears were doing last year. They had him in with some running as a running back a couple of the plays later in the season. So what are your expectations from that? What has coaches talked about that at all, what they're planning on doing with the new shift? I know everyone's kind of figuring it out right now.
It's weird because I feel like there's a lot of unknowns. And I asked Richard Hightower about this. Like, are you going to use one returner? Are you going to use two returners? And it sounds like they will try to be as versatile as they can and use two returners. But there's some things that I just don't know if you can truly anticipate how you're going to have to adjust to the new kickoff rules until we start seeing this in preseason games. I think the kickoffs are going to be must-see TV to see how teams are. You don't want to show too much, but you want to be proficient at doing it. And even now, seeing from rookie camp to OTAs, there have been moments where they have not had perfect execution on it because players are learning new rules. I mean, the whole kicking into a zone and the shorter field, and I think it will give you an opportunity for returners to capitalize on guys who have that burst and have that speed. That's something for Velus Jones in a crowded wide receiver room. Like, if you're going to be playing receiver on this team or be on the 53-man roster at that position, you better contribute. And I think for him, as a third-round pick who, is kind of on his last chance, more or less, to really put his stamp on this roster and make an impact, doing it on special teams is probably like the most, I guess, kind of the clearest path that he has, because it's not like this wide receiver depth chart is getting, any thinner. Like, it's pretty stacked right now with the top three that you have. But on top of that, I think for Velus to be able to show that he's a better returner than some of the other options you have, which historically it's been running backs, it's been cornerbacks to a degree. Like, you got to make sure that you have something that they can't find elsewhere and give that roster spot to somebody else.
Now, what about on the other side of this with Tory Taylor? They used, pretty high draft capital on a punter, which some people thought was crazy. Some people were like, we saw what the lack of punt with Trenton Gill. Unfortunately, it looked like, the first year would be really fun. It kind of fizzled out a little bit. But then a lot of people, too, the Kansas City Chiefs come out, say that they'll be using their punter as a kicker a lot of times with these new rules. Have the coaches spoke on that at all?
Not much, but that's a great question because like what the Chiefs said about not using Harrison Butker on kickoffs and maybe just saving him for, field goals and PATs. Yeah. I wonder if that's going to be something that other teams have to dedicate like their same resources to, because, with punts, they view like the numbers speak for themselves, like how Tory Taylor at Iowa outgained Iowa's offense last year by about 1,000 yards of straight up just punt yardage, which is a wild feat. They view him as a weapon though. So like when I think of that, I think, okay, flipping the field, giving your team good starting field position, like after a drive, like that's, that stuff matters. But is there another way for them to utilize him? And maybe it is something like that instead of him just being, a holder on, on the kicking battery. I would be very curious to see, because I know they toyed with it last year where there was Trenton Gill and Cairo Santos both kicking off in the preseason on kickoff, but we'll see with Tory Taylor. I know he's never kicked off in a college football game, but I think he does have some experience, like maybe dating back to his Australian rules football experience with doing some of that.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to me because I know a lot of people say that like the XFL had kind of obviously big legs, but also just bigger guys doing that job there because of just the shifts of everything and how much closer a lot of the players are. But so that'll be fun to see. Another thing, a couple more before I let you go, Courtney, the wide receiver room. You just talked about how, especially at the top, how heavy it is. It's a long time since, I don't know if ever, the Bears wide receiver room has looked anywhere close to what this feels like it's going to look like. And we haven't seen Rome Odunze play an NFL game, but just everything you've heard about him from college is just he's that contested catches guy, obviously highest rate in college football. So you're expecting a lot of that, but unfortunately had a hamstring issue. So was kind of working back from that in OTAs. But what have you seen so far, this group in general, how they're meshing, how it kind of seems like the flow's going with them?
That's what mandatory camp will be a good 3-day period to watch that group specifically, because we have not seen everybody here. So like Keenan Allen, the 2 OTAs that we were allowed out there for was not there. And again, it's voluntary, but I anticipate him being here. Matt Eberflus said he anticipates him being here for mandatory minicamp. With Odunze, he had some sort of I think it was more precautionary than anything. Like it wasn't hamstring. It was like hamstring soreness, tightness, however they classified it. But he was still, those days that he didn't practice, the first OTA during rookie camp on that Saturday when he wasn't out there, like it was more just, it felt like they were just kind of like holding him back. Like right now, like why push it more or less? Yeah. Because he was still like hanging out with the quarterbacks, like kind of, shadow running a little bit, if you want to call it that, like kind of at walkthrough speed. And we'll see what he, but like, I think his trajectory, pairing that up with Caleb Williams, is going to be beneficial to this entire offense, because you have a rookie quarterback learning the playbook at the same time that this wide receiver is learning the Bears route tree. For those two to get the extra reps in, which they have, they're throwing before they got to Chicago. They've been obviously working together pretty closely since they've gotten here. It's huge. And, DJ Moore and all that he did in Justin Fields, the one season he had with Justin Fields, I think that that's something you can really hang your hat on if you're the Chicago Bears, seeing how it doesn't take him long to adjust to whichever quarterback he's playing with. And somebody said it recently just about how the way that Caleb's able to place the ball in specific places for receivers and lead receivers, like kind of into, having the ball marry up when they get to the top of their route. It's different. It's anticipation throws that I think will really benefit this quarterback within this offense, because his receivers trust him to make those throws, and he's capable of doing that. So to watch the three of them, the whole thing about it being a race to 1,000 yards, that's a real mindset that they take on in that room. And I'll be curious to see who is that person who's able to get there quicker than the rest of the position room.
It'll be fun. I did a quick just with some of the Chargers people on Keenan Allen, and they said had nothing but good things to say about Keenan Allen. But one of their things was just how good of a locker room guy he is, and how well he was able to kind of mentor and help develop some of the younger wide receivers there. And so I think it's perfect for Rome to be around someone like that. In addition to obviously kind of growing and develop with Caleb too. Another one I think that is is the offensive line. When we were leaving, unfortunately, the last 2 seasons they just weren't quite on the level we wanted them to be. But I do think a lot of that is injury. I don't think the line played together. The starters played together more than 4 or 5 times the last couple seasons because of that. But guys like that, how optimistic are you about what they did add with Ryan Bates and some of the other guys in the offseason for this offensive line?
Well, I think it starts with the quarterback specifically. I think some of the maybe flaws that you thought you saw in the offensive line last year, at least that's how it came across. I think some of that will be mitigated given the quarterback play and Caleb Williams' ability to get out of jams and do what he has to do instead of just kind of sitting back there scanning the field and not seeing anything and taking a sack. Like, not every sack is created equal, and we know that not every sack was on the O-line last year with Justin Fields at quarterback. But you've got another year of Darnell Wright after a strong rookie campaign. I mean, he gave up a sack in the first 5 games, I believe, but there was a moment where it really just clicked with him, and he was dominant against with the setting up the run, and certainly what he did. I mean, he played more snaps than anybody else in the entire team. Like, he's durable, and that's important for him getting another year under his belt. I think Braxton Jones for right now is fine. I think he's a serviceable option for them at left tackle, and to see what they did with Karana Emagaji, like that's not a for now acquisition, more or less. I mean, first off, he's coming off the quad injury, he's a 3rd round pick. He'll need time to get into an NFL body. But I think down the line, you might have your replacement for him, for Braxton Jones, which is a good thing to have, thinking about not just this year, but next year and beyond. But the real thing is that are the additions that they made on the interior of the offensive line going to lead them down the right path, starting with the center quarterback connection? It just did not flourish the way that they had hoped when they signed Lucas Patrick 2 years ago, and then he gets injured. And then, of course, Cody Whitehair's playing there to start the season last year, and Tevin Jenkins gets injured, so he's got to move back, and then Lucas Patrick gets put back in. It's the one position you really do need to have a lot of cohesion, and they never did. So if you're reading the tea leaves here, clearly the Bears like Ryan Bates a lot. Like, they tried to get him in 2022. Buffalo matched the offer sheet. And to watch them go back and get him this offseason via trade, I think that instead of spending a draft pick there, because they had so few to begin with, this was the right move for the Bears if they believe that he's going to be an upgrade. And you also have center depth behind him. I know we saw Coleman Shelton kind of getting most of the quote unquote reps with the ones the other day, or at least with Caleb Williams. I fully anticipate that Ryan Bates will be the starting center for this team, come week 1 against Tennessee. But hey, they've got depth at that position they didn't really have the last couple of years. So it's something that's probably a better thing to have than not.
Definitely. With Tevin, have they spoke on at all, because a contract year for him, and I know injuries have really plagued him, but when he's on the field, there's no denying he's one of the better guards that are on the football field or in the NFL, honestly, at times. So have they spoke on that at all?
No, contract? And I mean, I think when Ryan Poles did talk about contracts kind of in general, it came off a question I asked him about Keenan Allen a couple months ago. But they've got other priorities that they have to address, Tevin Jenkins is due for a contract this year. How do they feel about his health? That's a gamble that they've got to take. He's been injured every season, last year with the calf kind of unexpectedly in training camp during joint practices. What do they are they really going to make that investment? Because when he can play, when he's healthy and he's out there, he's the best offensive lineman they have. So I weigh that in terms of financially, what are you willing to commit to somebody like that? And also long term, do you feel that the return on investment will be there? But that's one, they're not really in any rush. It doesn't seem to do it right now, but that would be one. If you believe he's part of that core of your future on the offensive line, he's still young, despite the injuries. I think you probably go ahead and get that one done at some point in the coming months.
Yeah, and him and Herbert obviously will be the next two that and DJ Moore, probably the three that they'll be talking about with contracts coming up. So we'll see some of that. But final one before I let you go, Courtney, mandatory minicamp starting tomorrow for the Bears. What are you looking at when you're out there once this portion of the offseason comes along?
Yeah, I want to see how comfortable Caleb Williams looks, because what Matt Eberflus said is the right thing to say, that no progress is not linear, and he's going to have ups and downs throughout his rookie season. I don't think anybody has this like unrealistic expectation that he's just going to be a world beater from the start. Mm-hmm. I think if you were looking at this realistically, like not having any sort of CJ Stroud expectation is the right way to go about it. So how does he look? Like, are there little things he can do? So if pass protection breaks down and like very clearly it would be a sack, is he running around with the ball or is he deading it? Like, I think that those are moments that will show me signs of growth of, you know, what he's doing in practice time to kind of prepare himself for a real live situation. And then when we do get to see them in red zone again, has he cleaned up what happened? I mean, there were a lot of bad passes that first red zone period we saw. Like, it starts with the footwork. How does his footwork look? How quick are those passes coming out of his hand? Like, how much time is he waiting behind the offensive line to make something happen? Those are like when they're not in pads, and like it's hard to tell like just about like what the, you know, they're running base plays. They're not game planning for any opponent right now. They're running like the very basic concepts of this offense. Mm-hmm. How do those things, like how can he master those things? Because then you're going to know, okay, when they come back for training camp, he's either at this level, whatever it is. You want to have a realistic feel for what work he's going to have to do over that 6 weeks period before he gets back in the building.
Yeah, I live down here in Jacksonville, Courtney, but from what I've seen, Chicago is fully embracing Caleb Williams. I saw the videos from Wrigleyville with him kind of leading Green Bay Sucks chants and all of that. Has it been fun to kind of watch that progress up there?
It's different because he's shown so much personality for a rookie and a rookie quarterback at that in this city, which I just don't think that's not normal. Like Mitch Trubisky didn't have that same sort of swagger with him, and Justin Fields, you know, just was a different. His personality was different than Caleb Williams. What, you know, the eyeballs that are on Caleb, and kind of like going into the Hard Knocks conversation, like the eyeballs meet the expectations, which are enormous right now. And he's not giving you no sign that he can't handle those things, which will be very interesting to see the progression of him in the spotlight and him as an NFL player and how he deals with that added attention. Like, does it become a distraction? I kind of feel like it's hard to think it would, given like everything he's already, you know, achieved in his young career in the college football rankings, in the college football realm. But you never know. I mean, it's just kind of, you wonder, all right, is the boisterous showman, which is a good thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. Will that guy be there if they lose a stretch of games? Will his focus change? Will he not be as outward as he's been before? So we'll see, but it's just been really different covering a quarterback at the rookie level. I haven't done that in a couple of years, but also seeing somebody who's kind of transcended, you know, the normal attention that a rookie quarterback gets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been fun and it will continue to be fun. I think if USC was any indication, the losing won't affect his personality, but it is obviously on a bigger stage in the NFL, and Chicago can be rough. We know that. The fans are passionate and they love the Bears. So again, Courtney Cronin, ESPN, Chicago Bears for ESPN. Thank you so much for hopping on with me. I really appreciate it. I know, and I said this when we were off, but you're fantastic and we enjoy your work. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.